Welcome into the Victory Sports Network, a little podcast here for you. It's been a while since we've talked. Pat Donley, Jason Dannelly with you, talking a little NAIA football and other things today. We mostly wanted to check in because Pat and I haven't had the opportunity really to catch up in our personal lives here lately. And that conversation always devolves into the world of NAIA football. So we said, let's do a podcast. We could catch up personally. We could talk a little about NAIA football. And if any of the regulars out there care to watch, awesome. Nice to have you, everybody.
Jason, we're so much fun. We're so good at this now. We're seasoned veterans. We're going to talk some football. We're going to talk, maybe our overtime segment, takes the majority of the show. Who knows? But it's the offseason, so why not?
This entire show is basically overtime. We don't we're like, what should we talk about? And like 5 minutes before the show, it's like, I don't know, we can talk about some of the coaches that left and then just kind of see where it takes us. So we've got that happening for us.
Yeah, we won't talk about the other things we were discussing.
No. There were some pre-show things that they need to stay in the green room. We'll say that we'll stay in the green room.
Yeah.
Now that we're out on the stage, we're Jimmy Kimmel. We're hey, how's everybody doing? It was a little bit more of the man show before.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm not doing the Jimmy Kimmel thing about crying on air though. I'm not doing that. So just throw it out there.
No, I mean, I'll cry on air if like something falls on me, probably a little bit because I've just become that way in my life. But no, so let's talk a little NAIA football. We kind of mentioned we want to talk about some of the coaching changes, and you brought it up, and we need to talk about it. The last coach's interview that we did together was Coach Woodley at Grandview, and pre-show, we're kind of talking to him, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I'm out to kind of meet with my offensive coordinator right now and go through some things." I think he said, he goes, "You could kind of read between the lines what that might be." And both Pat and my ears went up like, wait a second. So instantly we were like, he's going somewhere, or Fulton's going somewhere, or something's happening. So we after the show we started kind of devising it, and well, I'll kind of let you jump in here.
Well, it was kind of funny because the first thing he said, he's meeting with Fulton. I'm thinking, okay, Fulton's leaving. Okay, which makes sense. And he's a young guy. I can't imagine coaches he might be right around 30, maybe. Yeah. Early 30s, if that. So I kind of figured he was going somewhere. You thought it was Coach Woodley going somewhere. I thought it was Fulton going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of thinking Fulton would take over because Coach Woodley was leaving. But I was thinking it was Fulton leaving. And Woodley was staying. So we were both
right.
We were both right. Yeah. So we didn't think both at the same time were going. And then we kind of talked about in the show after Coach left about how I recently went back and watched this again because I was curious. And you said something about the real football in Des Moines, Iowa was played at Grandview University compared to the other school in town, which is non-scholarship. And I said, yeah, because they know better because they did play at one time. But they know better because they'd get worked. I mean, because Grandview is, far superior program as it sits today. Well, obviously now Coach Woodley now is the head football coach at Drake University across town in Des Moines. And I think even Coach Woodley, as good a guy as Coach Woodley is, we had him back on the show, he'd say, yeah, I probably don't want to take the Bulldogs over to play the Vikings across town right now at least. Because of where Grandview is compared to where Drake is. But, I thought that was hilarious. It's so funny. We talked about that on air. We obviously recorded it. And within a few days, word came down that Coach Fulton's going to Central Michigan, which we were correct about with Matt Drinkle. And then Coach Woodley now, the head coach of Drake. So, and then Coach E.J. Peterson taking over the Vikings, man. Cool. I'm happy to see that a follower of the Woodley coaching tree, a person involved in that coaching tree is taking over. So that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the return of Adam Dutcher, he comes back. He played for Grandview. He was at McPherson for a while. I believe he was in the high school ranks right around the area. And then he has come back to the program as well. A lot of alums on that program. And I think it's important anytime that a NAIA school loses a head coach and really loses a head coaching family like they had. The Woodleys have been synonymous with Grandview football since its inception. And to see it go to a program that is alumni that have kind of been brought up through like what that work was to get the program where it was, and to have a guy like E.J. Peterson, who was a fantastic football player, hard worker, hard nosed. Like that guy was a stud. And then he gets into the college football coaching ranks, goes D coordinator, now becomes head coach. Like if you're a Grandview alum, you have to be happy with where that program is at and where it could be going with Coach Peterson, taking the reins there.
I think with this scenario with, Coach Woodley Sr. retiring and back in 2018, with Coach Woodley, taking over, the just in 2000, was it, you had the record, Jason, I don't know off the top of my head.
2019,
2019, yeah. But it was like he lost 5 games.
Oh yeah, he was like 65-5 or 59-5, something like that. Yeah. I mean, it was like that. I remember the Kalen DeBoer number, 69-3, because 69. Right. Sorry, it's where my brain is, people. So because of that, I remember. And Woodley's was like 2 more losses than that.
It was like 70 something and 5, or I can't pull off the top of my head, but like Mike Woodley.
Hold on, it was 72-5. I have it on the article right here by me.
Like Mike Woodley's percentage was insane. And then 72-5. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's insane. So I think if you're the Grandview nation out there to say, okay, who's the guy? I think it'd be Derek Fulton or it'd be E.J. Peterson. This is a great opportunity for him, and I think they're pretty confident moving forward that there is a guy that's been a lifer with Grandview taking the thing over and who's part of that Woodley tree. So no, I think it's a great thing. And back to this original point we've had many times in the show. Add Coach Peterson is one of the all-time great coaches in the NAIA. There were all-time great players like Shan Housekeeper, a couple of those other guys we've talked about. What a player he was. And I had to coach against that guy, and he was a nightmare. So good for him. Great NAIA player. Now a head football coach at now will be the defending national champion.
Yeah, sometimes we should have a show going through the coaches in their NAIA football career, because there's a ton of them out there. There's a ton of guys that came up through the NAIA. And for me, there's a personal point to it, because a lot of these guys, when I started up 20 years ago, they were playing, and 15 years ago and 10 years ago, they were playing, and now they're coming through the coaching ranks and becoming a head coach. And I think it's awesome. It's great for the brand of NAIA football, because you have guys that understand it and that just get it. And that was part of the conversation I had the other day, with Coach Terry Harrison. Coach Harrison was a quarterback at Sterling College. They were 0-10 his junior year. Andy Lambert comes in, they go 5-4 his senior year. He sticks around, he coaches there. He's got that NAIA pedigree. So even though he went away to high school for a bit and then came to Bethel before he went to Friends, he got it. And I look at so many of these coaching hires, and maybe I'm telling my hand a little bit, but when I look at some of the hires that certain colleges have made, I can look at them and I can tell you my level of confidence in them. And then I can kind of look at them and go, well, I hope they think that that's the right guy for the program and it works out, because I don't want any program at the NAIA to fail or not do good because they made a bad coaching hire. In their own world, they all think, hey, we made the hire. We got our guy. This is the guy that's going to lead us. Everybody thinks that when they make a new head coach. And there's ones out there that I look at the pedigree. I look at the understanding of the NAIA, the conferences, how things work. And there's a learning curve there. And I do think some guys sometimes come in from a higher level or haven't been around the NAIA and they think, I got this. This is NAIA football. And then they get smacked in the mouth pretty quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look at, you talked about Coach Sampson, was a former player, correct? He was at Rocky, correct?
He was at MSU Northern, Montana State Northern.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of guys we've just discussed over the years that were former players.
Yeah. Michael Jasper, who just left Bethel University in Tennessee. Right. He was a defensive lineman there. You've got just kind of going through a few things here. LaQuinton Black got hired at Missouri Valley. He's a former player from Missouri Valley there as well. I mean, you got a lot of guys that have come through and are kind of part of that coaching tree now. And
your interview last night, Coach Harrison, like you said, was at Sterling, correct? Played at Sterling.
Yep, was at Sterling. Yep.
And doing a great job at Friends. So yeah, you can definitely go back and look at the NAIA folks. This is a great affiliation. They want to be a part of it. It's kind of funny how many guys that are coaching at rival schools from where they played. There's a couple of those, and Coach Peterson be a different one of those. But Shan Housekeeper, think all-time great Georgetown legend. Playing at the rival school, south of Georgetown there in Cumberland. So it's a pretty cool list you could put together, and certainly have. I could start the 2 pass rushers, Jason. It'd be Housekeeper and Peterson. Oh, that'd be a nightmare of all-time great NAIA players that are now coaches. So
you would have those guys right there. I mean, you're going into the Wayback Machine too on some of these guys, but even like your father, Kevin Donley at Anderson. You've got
Wayback Machine. You're talking
way back machine. Pete Stanton, Dickinson State is another one. I mean, there's a ton of guys that come to mind as you run through things here to just say. I mean, it's when you see the success, oftentimes it comes that way, or oftentimes you just get the right coach that understands how to coach football. And kind of an aside into that, that's what Georgetown College had. They hired Chris Oliver. Oliver was there for several years, got to the playoffs, got to the semifinals. He resigns and he takes the position of the vice president of athletics, and they promote a defensive coordinator, John Perrin. So, it's no mystery that Pat and I have kind of got some inside tracks on coaches. You definitely had an inside track, a personal relationship with Coach Oliver there. And it's always a little sad to see him go, because it's like, now I can't text and just be like, dude, what happened? And then he'll give me the text answer, and then I'll make it sound better on the air than maybe what he texted me about what happened in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Coach Oliver. We're the exact same age, same graduating class. So I've known Coach Oliver since we were seniors in high school. I'm not kidding you. His brother was the SID at St. Francis when Dad started the program at St. Francis. So that's the small world connection. And it's so funny. He even told the story when he was on the show the one time about he and I just walk around the sidelines at a Georgetown St. Francis game in like 1999 or 2000. It was 99. Yeah, he was a freshman at Ohio State. I was a freshman at St. Francis. We're walking the sidelines. And, sure enough, fast forward 25 years, he's head football coach at Georgetown. So, kind of a crazy deal. But, yeah, I was really surprised by that one, Jason. And the kind of funny thing is, I think Coach Oliver has a real passion for the university or the college there in Georgetown, and wants to really give back and really get big into the fundraising part of it, is what I've gathered in talking with he. And I've talked to his brother a little bit too. Just kind of, I was concerned, like, is something going on? Is there help? No, it was purely a thing where, and believe me, I'm a guy that was a former coach. It's a lot, folks. And especially, being the head coach, I can't even imagine. It's a lot of stuff, and you've got to be all in, all committed to it. It is tough on families and that sort of thing. So I was kind of curious. And it wasn't a thing where coaches kind of lost the passion for coaching. It was the thing where he felt compelled, again, from what I've heard, to get into the university from a fundraising standpoint and really giving back and having that great university grow. So that's what I found out.
The other thing is too, when you get to meet some of these coaches, like, I think everybody kind of has this stigma of what a football coach is, and just a blockhead, meathead. Here's what this. There's a number of football coaches out there that are far smarter than me, and you could put Chris Oliver in that list. Like, he's just an intelligent guy, gets the business of college athletics, and will be good in that position. Hey, real quick, though, Pat, I always like to try to have a little bit of a surprise. I did that with Coach Harrison the other night. You mentioned you and Coach Oliver like walking around freshmen in college. This is not freshman in college, but this is real close to like post-graduating college here. Savannah, Tennessee. I think this is the first national championship game you walking onto the field here.
Don't see it.
You don't see it?
No.
Really? It might be the screen and how we're sharing. Let me go full screen on this.
What a tease.
How can you see it now?
No.
Screen? Oh man. Well, geez, what the heck? I tell you, it's we'll circle back to that. I don't know why you're not seeing it. It might circle back. Can you tell I work in corporate America at times?
Or throwing out some acronyms that no one understands.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave me right there with you. Yeah.
But
I had no gray in the beard for sure. I had no beard back then.
No beard.
Yeah, we have no receding hairlines. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sending the photo over to you here. It's gonna click through on your email there. But just you can't. Can you can see me though on your end?
See you fine, yeah.
Weird, very weird. Well, with that said, it's a wonderful picture. Wonderful picture of you.
Oh yeah. Boy, that might be 80 pounds, 70 pounds ago. That was svelte, handsome fella.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I thought it was going to be you as well. I thought, okay, it's another guy. Gotcha. Yeah. I think it's 24 there. 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I was looking for is I thought you and I somewhere we have a picture together from that first national championship that you guys were in.
Let me do some digging. I could probably find one.
There you go.
Because I probably has one.
I was clicking through. I just did the old Google photo and did a face search, and that was the only one I had from you from the way back in the day. That wasn't on this podcast. So,
hey, I was thinking about something the other day. I've been with my wife now over 20 years. You know, you were on our first date. You were the third wheel in our first date.
Yep.
That's how long we've known each other and how significant our relationship has been. That you literally were hanging out with my wife and I on technically our first quasi date.
Yeah. Because was that the Thursday night was that Thursday night Freddie T's, or what did
it might have been Friday actually, because we were at the national championship event, and remember that crew was great. They gave like the coaches and media folks like, hey, you guys went to rental cars, here you go.
Yeah.
It was like cool. I'm like, so, and I was talking to my wife at the time, very casually at the time, but she was there. Her brother played for us at St. Francis. That's the thing. She's older than I am. And that's how we met. And her brother's All-American for us, and kind of a short, backstory there. But literally it's like, okay, hey, we're going to go see this great town, Savannah, Tennessee. Jason and I, you want to come hang out? And literally, fast forward, 25 years later. Was it 25? Wait, 04. No, 21 years. Yeah. So it'll be 21 years this winter that happened. And you were on our first date, brother. How about that?
Yeah. It's crazy how like little things like that. And I remember you kind of pulling me to the side in a conversation, because you're like, hey, we're going to do this, but Chris plays for us and he doesn't really know. So like, don't say anything. And I was like,
I think he did, but yeah. And he had a cool relationship now, but it was that was his last game, the national championship in 04. So yeah.
Do you remember the limousine?
Yeah, I was doing it for 18, of course.
Yeah, because I took the limousine to Freddie T's with a number of people, but who happened to be in the limousine with me was your sister and one of her friends as well.
I was actually home getting ready for the game. I did not go that night because was it that Friday night, I think, before the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Thursday night, so the Freddie T's night, and again, this is like, boy, you're talking. This is a really niche group that's going to be listening to any of this.
The listenership that's understanding is like,
what are we talking about? Anyway, there's a party, the national championship, back in the day when you were there for 4 days. I guess it was 3 days, probably back in the early 2000s in Savannah, Tennessee. There was a lot of things you had to do. There's a whole agenda. And the Wednesday night party was a lot of fun. Or it was Thursday night party.
Because Friday night was the banquet.
So another backstory. So the community of Savannah, Tennessee, the town or the county that was in was
a dry county.
It was a dry county.
Pickwick.
Yeah, whatever the county was in the South. Yeah. Those that don't know that aren't from the South, there's actually something called dry counties in the South. And people in the North are like, what are you talking about? There's literally counties you can't purchase alcohol anywhere. And that county in Tennessee where the national championship was a dry county. So we actually had to go into Mississippi is where Freddie T's was, if you remember.
Yep. Hardin County. That's what it was.
Hardin County, yeah.
Hardin County.
That was a dry county. So the Thursday night party with families were invited, the coaching staffs, not the players. It was kind of a unique deal. So you had to who's got the GAs that stick back and, watch the players. But it was like a thing that was required. You had to go. Yeah. It was like a whole event. There was a media component to it as well. And so we went, and I remember, so my limousine ride down, it was probably a good, 10, 12 mile drive, I would guess, across the Mississippi border, the state of Mississippi border. And I rode and had an adult beverage with our president, who happened to be a nun.
Yes.
So that happened.
Yes. Sister Elise
Chris. Yeah, I was in the limo with her. Of course, we got to temper what we're talking about in language, but we were cracking beers. It was kind of funny. So
that was probably my first introduction to going to Freddie T's, and then obviously seeing all the dignitaries of the school around. President Tom Trebon, I believe was his name, from Carroll College at the time, and all these presidents and dignitaries are there, and then watching over, because there was a couple nuns that traveled along with Celise, and you look over and just like a Bud Light or Miller Light in your hand, in their
smash of beers.
But then I grew up Catholic, so it's like, well, Catholic, I get it.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be too concerned with that. But the thing that I always liked about Freddie T's and that party back in the day is the coaches were there, like you said. It was kind of a required thing, and then they'd kind of cut loose. I remember watching Coach Van Diest dancing to Mustang Sally with his wife and doing like the whole twirling her and stuff like that, and watching other coaches do it. So it was definitely fun.
The 3 years that we were there, it was kind of cool to see. Like you see, Mike Van Diest and Kevin Donley hanging out. You can imagine being a guy that's in that conversation, to the all-time greats, hanging out. Seeing Kalen DeBoer and Kevin Donley hanging out, and I've seen that. I've hung out with Coach DeBoer at Freddie T's, that one time, and spent a lot of time with him just talking, because we were, somewhat the same age. He's a few years older than me, but obviously, a rising star in the coaching ranks, takes his team as a 31-year-old head coach to the national championship. So I want to be around that guy. And kind of developed a relationship there. I know you were there that night as well. And, he was kind of that guy that everybody knew that was going to be that rising star. And you want to be around him. And he was the same way. You want to be around guys like my dad and picking their brain as he was developing in, to the coach that he eventually became. So, pretty cool stuff. And yeah, again, we're narrowing our audience of understands what we're talking about. But basically, it was a social event around the national championship. And I'm sure, I don't know the whole dynamic in Durham now because I'm not played there. But even like we were in Daytona Beach in our championship runs, or 16 and 17, it was kind of similar. There was probably as much interaction with the teams together other than like the traditional banquet, probably because there've been fights. It was a lot more cordial, St. Francis and Carroll and Sioux Falls back in those days. But yeah, there was like a pep rally and that type of thing. But there's a lot of events in the national championship that kind of go hand in hand with being there. That's what the thing with Coach Woodley we talked about in our last interview, was it's such a quick turnaround. I can't imagine now with not having an extra week that they have as much of an agenda in Durham. I wouldn't think, at least with a new playoff format.
No, it's got to be tough. And that's the thing I look back at with, it was Team Hardin County, that put it on. And
they were great.
Everybody that did that. I think they understood facility-wise and attractions. They don't have Daytona Beach. They didn't really have Rome, Georgia. So they went above and beyond on the hospitality. Mm-hmm. And I think that attitude and how they did that kind of got transferred to Rome, Georgia as well, because there's really great hospitality there. I cannot speak to Daytona or Durham because I've not been at either, or the year that they were at Grambling. I was not at those, but I can tell you for championship facility, hospitality, Rome, Georgia, and Hardin County, those guys did a phenomenal job. And I think there is discussion. I mean, I don't think I think it's known that Durham is kind of in the last year of their contract. In fact, I believe I know there's been no announcement as to where next year's national championship game is going to be. So we're kind of awaiting that, and whoever gets it, wherever it is, whether it go back to Durham or where it go to a new place, I'm hearing rumors as to where that is. The hospitality's got to be there. You got to make it a big event for the student athletes, but also for the fans to come down and enjoy it. And I hear the rumblings of where it's kind of, I think it's down to two places, but I don't want to say because I want to look like a complete jerk.
Are they warm climates at least?
One is warm. The other would depend a little bit on what the weather happens that week. It would historically, it could be in the 60s. It could be in the 30s.
Right.
There could be snow. So,
well, we actually played in Daytona Beach. The first time we played there, you're talking humidity and probably the high 70s to low 80s. And the second time, not that it was cold to us by any means, but it was probably in the 50s. So yeah, it was, it's Florida can be the same way. So
I remember watching the one championship. It was a night game. Were they both night games when you played down there? Okay.
Yep. And it was chilly. I had a long sleeve jacket on, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, it was just totally different than literally it's like humidity and you're sweating the previous year. So it's kind of crazy how that worked. But Daytona is pretty cool. I mean, I'm not going to, talk too much about it, but it's not the classiest place in the world. I mean, it's like a spring break haven, right? But, it's a warm climate. There's things to do, certainly. Probably too many things to do. You got to keep an eye on the players. It was interesting to say the least.
Well, a lot of people are going to be gunning to make it to wherever the next national championship is at. So hopefully they do a great job. One thing I did want to bring up through recent NAIA football stories and things that are happening out there, kind of the thing I hate to see, but in a way you kind of go, well, you look at how they did it and they weren't doing it right. North American University out of Houston, Texas, they're discontinuing their football program. So the NAIA is losing one, but gaining one in the University of Rio Grande in the next year. There are certain schools, and we've said this, when they set up their football program, you could tell really early on if they're setting it up for success or if they're setting it up for hey, we need 100 male student athletes in here to help enrollment. And unfortunately, it looks like that could be the latter with North American University and their discontinuation of football. I mean, you get into the finances of everything there, and ultimately they make that decision because the risk of the football program is not meeting the reward. And unfortunate to see so many student athletes that were playing at this level or looking for homes, coaching staff, families, everything like that.
Folks, there are so many great examples. If there's anyone out there listening to us right now or watching us that want to potentially start football at the NAIA level, there are so many great examples of how it's done right or it's been done right. Go visit those people. Go to Indiana Wesleyan. Go to Kaiser University. Go to St. Thomas. Go to Otto, Arizona. Go to Southeastern, which has been around now, less than 15 years or so, or 20, less than 20, certainly. University of St. Francis, where my father would love to to talk to you about how he started the process in the late 90s of starting a football program. There are tremendous success stories of new programs that have happened in the last 25 years. Marion University, Ted Karras is back at Marion. He was the founding father of that great program. So there are so many examples of how to do it right. And unfortunate to hear about, the school in Texas, North American, right? Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yep.
Closing up. And it's a shame because you think about the Houston recruiting base. Holy crap. That's pretty good. I mean, it's one of those things that, you want to make sure you're dotting I's and crossing T's and having all the information you possibly can to know what you're getting yourself into because you want to do it right. And especially a place that has a recruiting base and the love of football like the state of Texas and the city of Houston. Man, that's disappointing because it could be a big one. We talked about Concordia, Ann Arbor. It was kind of more of an institutional thing where all athletics went away, but that happened. And I hope they come back, but it's scary to think that a school that is tuition driven with athletics going away, does the school close next? I hope that's not the case. But it was good to see Coach Schumacher getting on the Saginaw staff. Happy to see that. Really good guy, really great coach, and working with a good Division II program up in Michigan. So, I did see that. I'm not sure where the other assistants went. But yeah, it is unfortunate to see, some schools closing, but it's good to see it. We do have Ohio School in Rio Grande. It is Rio Grande, which is kind of a unique name.
Yeah. Rio like Ohio.
Rio like Ohio, yeah. And they've been around, the basketball and, the other sports for a while here in the Midwest, but they're more toward it's Southern Ohio. So they're more, they're going to be playing, I think, mid-South teams, correct, Jason, if I'm not mistaken, I think.
Yep.
And they're close to, the Appalachian Conference as well.
AAC, yeah, that is kind of going to be the world that they're in.
Sure. Yeah, it's Southern Ohio. It's down there, kind of the Kentucky, West Virginia, tri-state area. So, it's going to be interesting. Really, really interesting how that goes.
I think the biggest thing when it comes to adding NAIA football programs, the institution itself has to have somewhat of a foothold in who they are. And you look at like the University of Rio Grande, they've been around forever. Adding football is going to, I think, enhance the offerings that they have there. At National American, I've been around the NAIA 25 years. And, this is a school that when they added football, you kind of went, well, I don't know if you've really perfected the rest of that athletic department yet. And I'm not saying the athletic department's got to be perfect, but there's a lot of, like, I just pulled up the NAIA men's basketball top 25. And I look at that and you can kind of go through and say, if that school added football, they'd be successful. Like you look at Freed Hardeman in Tennessee. They've been a long-standing NAIA member. If they decided to do it, that's an institution that's going to do it right. Grace University, Indiana, that's one that could potentially, if they ever decided to, the way that their athletics department has ran, that's another one. There's a bunch of them out here I could go through. If they, put me in charge, Pat, I would love to go through and say, here's everybody I want to add football.
Give me your top five. You just mentioned two. Give me a couple more. I'm just curious. I find it fascinating because I think the sport popularity is not shrinking, Jason. I mean, I think the sport of football, again, I think now with the safety, the rule changes, and like the NFL is on top of all of the head injury issues, and I think equipment, as a guy that sells the equipment, is better than it's ever been, especially the helmets and the testing. I don't see the sport going away. And there was a time, you probably asked me 10 years ago, Jason, I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, I would say so too.
And now, even outside of the recruiting part, which I did for so long, for almost 20 years, now I'm in high schools, selling equipment and uniforms and that sort of thing. Rosters are not shrinking. And you kind of worry about some of the affluent schools, the private schools, if, participation dwindles or shrinks at all. I'm not seeing it, Jason. So I think that's a real positive thing about the great sport of football. But again, I think leadership and I think decision makers and people that are ahead of the game, the NFL to the NCAA to the NAIA are doing a really good job of trying to keep the sport as safe as possible. And I think the vendors of the equipment and things of that nature as well are doing a great job of making it as safe as possible. So the point being is, I don't see membership going away. I can see maybe more football teams added at the NAIA level and other levels.
So if my top five, I can't really say this is the number one. Actually, I do have a number one. Everything else after that kind of falls into place. Most of mine is regionally based. So like in the world that you're kind of in over there, Mount Vernon Nazarene would be one that I would love to see add football. And obviously, University of Rio Grande, they are adding football. That would have been one of the ones on my list. Shawnee State is one, but with it being a state institution, things get a lot stickier, when you kind of start looking at things there. You get into the state of Texas, Paul Quinn has kind of righted the ship over the last 20 years. They used to have football. I would love to see them bring football back. There is also Texas A&M University, Texarkana has expanded their baseball program. They've gotten a lot better. I'd like to see things, kind of in that area. My number one, if you said, who's your number one team that you want, or number one NAIA school that you want to see add football? Oregon Tech. Oregon Tech is my number one because it enhances West Coast football. Two, they used to have a great football program, and their legendary basketball coach, Danny Miles, actually still holds some NAIA records, I believe, for accuracy or passes thrown or something like that. When I was researching my top 25 quarterbacks of all time at the NAIA level, he was one that he popped up, and I was like, that's right, Oregon Tech till like 1990 had football. And that would be one. In the state of Montana,
is it private or public?
I believe it is public. I don't know. I mean, that's a 50-50 guess. Maybe I just got it right and people think I'm a genius. If I got it wrong, they'll be like,
sometimes they go both ways with Tech. I agree with you. I think the West Coast is certainly there was a group of schools, Jason, probably 7 or 8 years ago that I would have said, man, if they would start football within that conference, sign me up. And they all went Division II, was the West Coast, the California schools.
Yep.
Like the Concordia, Irvine, help me out. And then I know Azusa Pacific.
Point Loma Nazarene was in that. Yeah.
Southern California made a ton of sense to me to have that West Coast. And so you have kind of that Southwest conference, in the Southern California region. Then you have obviously the Frontier. I think that'd been pretty cool. Of course, they all go Division II. No one started football. But I thought that was one. If they would have stuck around the NAIA, that would be a great feather in our cap to have, presence in California. I think that'd be really cool. Now, I don't know. I'm with you. I think Texas, Ohio, the great traditional football states, I think are really, really, important. I'd like to see maybe a couple more in the Southeast, when the Carolinas maybe, another one maybe in South Carolina, maybe another in Southern Georgia, if there's one out there that I can't think of that are, maybe a baseball school. All the schools in the Southeast are so good in baseball and softball. That would be kind of what I was thinking. Texas, I would agree with. There's one right here where I live, Jason, in Fort Wayne. Indiana Tech is a really, really good.
Yes.
Every sport under the sun, Jason, from lacrosse to hockey, they have it all. Don't have football. It would be tough with my alma mater and my former employer here, butting heads in the city of Fort Wayne. It's not a huge city, but could they coexist? I don't know. But you're talking about a great campus, a great NAIA institution that's good in athletics and everything. That would be another one. I don't want to see it happen because of my alma mater. I'm still a St. Francis guy and will be forever. But they could do it, I think, because there's the support. It's a great campus and great athletic department.
You reminded me. I'd start going in the Wayback Machine in my brain. I'm like, holy cow, I was at that meeting. So 20 years ago, those California schools were looking at adding football.
Mm-hmm.
And I got invited into a meeting at Azusa Pacific University by Terry, their athletic director forever. That was their track coach, legendary guy, Terry Franzen. That was his name, Terry Franzen. And Gary Pine, who was the assistant athletic director, sports information director, now is the AD at Azusa Pacific, or at least he was last time I checked. They went Division II. I kind of stopped paying attention. But they had a meeting, and Fresno Pacific was there, Cal Baptist was there, Point Loma Nazarene was there, the athletic directors of those universities, and of course the athletic director that was he at Cal Baptist or Fresno Pacific? He's going to punch me in the face because I can't remember. But Kevin Steele was the athletic director, Cal Baptist. He was the athletic director at Cal Baptist. They were looking at football. He eventually went to Mid-American Nazarene, was at Mid-American Nazarene for a number of years, and now he's at Ottawa University in Arizona as the athletic director there. But there was a meeting to say, okay, could we add football? What could we do for scheduling? How do we do scholarships? And there was a serious look into it. Those schools did a serious study on it. They just never pulled the trigger. And ultimately, I know that's what led to the demise of Azusa Pacific football, because they just had nobody they could play. Even at the NAIA level, Division II level, scholarship football in Southern California, it just does not exist. You have to play D3, and the D3 conference out there was full, did not want to add another member, and it led to the demise of a great former great NAIA program in Azusa Pacific.
Totally agree with you. And I think if they would have pulled the trigger and done that, started football at some of those schools in California, I think you'd add more. And I think you'd have literally a frontier conference 20 years later, a frontier conference South. I 100% believe that. You're talking about, what is there, 65 million people in the state of California. There's not enough scholarship schools for those guys to go. It's why the JUCO, the JUCO schools, there's a million of them. You can literally walk 3 steps and run into another football playing junior college in the state of California.
Well, you don't even have to walk a step at Azusa Pacific, where their football field was. It was immediately butted up against Citrus Stadium, which was the community college right next there, and their football program. And it was a little bit weird going to Azusa Pacific, cover a football game. You're like, wait, we play at this stadium? Why don't we play at that one? That's a super nice publicly built stadium. And right. I know they did play some when they had play a couple games over there, but not very many. But that you're exactly right. In Southern California, that's how close some of those JUCO programs are.
Everywhere. Yeah, in the Bay Area, the same. I know Menlo College had NAIA football. Same deal. The program ended within. Yeah, I think they went from Division II to NAIA because I'm not sure how the whole history was.
They kind of did a back and forth, and they were one of the last remaining dual affiliations. That kind of all went away. Menlo was one. Nebraska Wesleyan was one, and eventually those places made the decision to say, okay, we're going to be a full member of this organization.
Right, and got rid of football.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know how you work being a NAIA football coach, living in the highest cost area in the entire country amid Silicon Valley. I can't even imagine. Hey, football coach, we're going to pay you $70,000. You can get an 800 square foot house for $1.2 million.
Yeah.
Live outside in your backyard. I mean,
we're going to pay you $70,000 a year, and it also comes with you being a dorm dad, because that's the only 100%. Place you're going to be able to live is
one place you can afford
dorms on campus.
Like Menlo is literally right next to Stanford University. I mean, they're like Atherton and Palo Alto are right next to each other. So yeah, it was kind of a crazy deal. But yeah, like Southern California, same deal. I mean, there's just there's such a population in not scholarship football for players. So you see, it's why the state of California, I mean, again, the junior college situation, obviously the FCS, division is pretty solid that way, but look at all the FCS players, Jason, end up at Montana State. Yep. I mean, tons. I mean, look at the entire, up by your region. Not probably as many at NDSU, but I know there's a ton like at South Dakota State. Those are West Coast guys a lot of times playing at that level.
There's a handful of them at NDSU right here in Fargo where I'm at. So it's interesting. That kind of brings us to a thing we wanted to hit on before we wrap things up. The one thing I'm still 50-50 on. I definitely do not have the attitude of Coach Miles Russ towards this yet, but like watching some of these NAIA guys that had pretty good seasons and then declare their eligibility and how much they've got left and that they're open for recruiting. Some of these guys, I'm happy for them. Some of them, I scratch my head, Pat, and I'm seeing guys transfer, and it's kind of like as an adult, I'm in a job and I make X number of dollars a year, and I'm going to go over here, and it's a lateral move. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're going from one place to another because they maybe promised you a little bit more of this. Is it really worth it? And I think we've seen some really good moves at the NAIA level because of the transfer portal. And I think we've seen some ones that are real head scratchers and kids that, we might never hear from them again when it comes to their college football career.
No question. The grass isn't always greener. And to me, and I may have a very firm opinion on this, I understand, and I'm in my mid-40s, so we're the same age. I'm 44 years old. I am not old school to the point where this is ridiculous. This is killing college football. I get it, okay? It is what it is. I don't see, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point. I think with the transfer portal situation and I think the NIL thing to some level, and I think that can be reeled back to some level and have some restrictions, but I don't think it's going to go away completely. Yeah. I don't see how that's ever going to happen. But my opinion on this is this, where I think if you're an NAIA player, I'm going to talk specifically about the NAIA, moving up, okay? Coach Russ talked about it, and I think he is one of the best people to get their opinion on this because he's a young coach, been successful, been a part of a national championship team, took his team there again this year. If you get NIL money and go play at the FBS, even FCS level from the NAIA level, I can't disagree with that. I certainly, if you're getting NIL at the FBS, goodness. And Kaiser, from what I remember, if Coach Russ told us correctly, I think he had one that did, like to Memphis, and got some money out of it.
Yep.
Guys, I mean, it's business. I mean, football is so physical. It's so taxing on your body. If you can earn, and with the rules now, if you can earn some money doing it, why wouldn't you do it?
Yep.
At the same time, when you're going NAI to Division II, Jason, unless it's something this is something unique that I'm unaware of, I don't see the benefit of leaving a great NAI program for an average Division II. I see no point.
The only benefit I see, and these are smart kids that are doing it, is if I'm going to, if I'm going to Dana College, it costs $40,000 a year to go to school there, and I got a $25,000 scholarship. Well, I still got $15,000 in debt that I'm incurring every year. If I can go to a Division II and that number is now zero, it makes sense to me there. Maybe that program is a lateral move. But, I think a lot of these kids are smart enough to go, I'm not going pro. I'm going to go become a teacher and a coach at a high school. I don't want to graduate with $60,000, $100,000, $150,000 worth of debt. I love this school, but I can go over here and my debt at the end of the year is zero. That makes financial sense to do it. And I think we have seen that happen some at the NAI level, but I do think there is a small percentage of NAI athletes that are delusional about, hey, we're going to make this jump and I'm going to get this NIL money. And all of a sudden, I'm reopening my recruitment, and I go to their Twitter and I still look at it and I'm like, you haven't signed anywhere, buddy. And it's March. Mm-hmm. Like, the opportunity's gone. That's the other thing too. I think opening up that transfer portal period to kind of towards the end of the first semester into a certain part of the second semester, and then closing it. Then you can't do it. This way, these kids get an opportunity to go to the other school, be there for spring ball, and get in for the fall. University of Nebraska, back where I grew up, they've done away with their spring game because they don't want guys to get tape out there to get pillaged from another university.
A lot are. They're not the only one. I think I've seen that a lot. A lot of Division I schools are doing away with it completely, the spring game.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are. I mean, it's truly a practice at this point. They're not doing, anything that's looks like, semblance of an actual game. So, no, I think it's a real problem. And I agree with you. I think there has to be, because I think the Division I side, and everything trickles down. I mean, I know we're not talking about Division I football, but it all trickles down. Where I think they've got to get things under control with transfer portal windows. I'll be honest with you, I think Coach Saban is at the forefront of this. And it's kind of funny. It's like they've almost distracted Coach Saban. When Coach Saban first retired, okay, I thought he was going to be the main guy of getting some type of regulation with NIL. Because he's the guy in his 70s, hates all of it, thinks it's all ridiculous from what he has said. And I thought he was going to get out in front of it and actually try to get some at least some regulations involved. But I think ESPN kind of deterred that, him going to ESPN. Yeah. I really do, because I heard him talk. Like, I think that's why he retired, Jason. I'll be honest with you.
100% it is, yeah.
I think he's had enough of it. I think a lot of guys you're seeing at the big-time level in Division I are going to the NFL or retiring, whatever it may be. They're tired of the wild, wild west type thing that is Division I football. And I'll draw a comparison here to NAIA in a second. But, I think he wants to create some regulation where you can't be paying out of high school kids $250,000, or even the rumor now is a kid at Michigan, the top recruit in the country that was committed to LSU, now going to the University of Michigan for millions, plural, out of high school, 18-year-old. And Jason, I don't care what level you are, there are busts all the time. I mean, that is a risky endeavor for these schools. So, I mean, it happens at that level, and it trickles its way down. And the thing that I'm talking to small school guys, and a lot of Division I guys as well, I don't know them as well, but you're having to recruit your own players every single semester to say, this is what we see you projecting to be a part of this organization. And if they don't like those things, Jason, whether it's like, they're disgruntled about playing time, or, maybe have a beef with a coach or whatever it may be, they're bailing. And the other thing on the flip side of that is too, if a freshman or sophomore, let's use the NAI level as example, has success, good luck keeping them, because they think there's something greener on the other side. And like you said, if there's a financial component to it, you certainly understand it. Like you said, the scholarship situation, which, the whole private school education cost thing maybe is the greatest travesty in our country right now. I didn't want to get into that subject.
That's a whole nother show.
We could do a whole show on that, how ridiculous it is and what costs are for private school education and even public school education at some level. It's insane. We'll talk about that another time. But I think if there's a financial component for a kid to go elsewhere and save significant money, I understand that. But if you're making a lateral move, let's say I got a tuition scholarship at NAIA school here. I got the same scholarship at the Division II school 2 hours away, just for the opportunity to play at a perceived higher level, I think is ridiculous. And I'll tell you right now, and I know what the heck I'm talking about with this. I think the top 15 Division II schools in the NCAA are better than NAIA. I do.
100%. Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, after that, Jason, you're talking about the top 5 to 10 NAIA schools in that tier from 15 to 25. There's no difference. I'm telling you right now. And many times Division II schools would. Well, look at this season with what Kaiser did to Division II opponents.
Yeah. And you even go back to 2 years ago, Montana Tech knocking off Central Washington. Central Washington makes a run in the Division II postseason. And Montana Tech did not. Oh, they got beat that year by Dickinson State. So, I mean, it's very comparable. I've always said, you can put D1, D2, D3 over here on this side. And then there's the ellipsis over here of what the NAI encompasses. And it goes about halfway, maybe to 3/4 of the way up into Division II, and then goes through the rest. Because here's the thing, there's some great Division III programs out there too. And number 1, number 2, number 3, your top 10 of Division III is going to, kick the snot out of a 5-5, 6-4, sometimes 7-3 NAI school. They're just that good at football. But once you get playoff qualifiers aside, we're playing the same game and we're seeing the same sort of results. But we're pontificating. Yeah. We should wrap things up because we do have other lives we need to get to, but I'll throw it back to you here for one.
No, I was going to say one thing. I think one of the coolest things we talked about, a kickoff game, with NAIA teams would be really cool. I think the one that I would love to see will never happen. This is totally a moot point. I'm bringing it up. I would love to see North Central and Grandview play. I think it'd be great. Yeah. The Division III national champion versus the NAIA national champion in the game, I think would be fantastic. The Mountain Union teams versus the Carroll teams back in the day. Us against, I say us and St. Francis against the North Central team, or I think it was Mary Hardin Baylor. Those would be fun games. Really, really fun games to see back, on an annual basis, if it ever could happen. But it's like an all-star game type thing. But, man, that'd be cool.
Yeah, closest thing we got was Wisconsin Whitewater going to Morningside a couple years ago. Those guys played 2015, I think it was 2015, 2016, something like that.
And I've said this before. Thank you, Wisconsin Whitewater coach Leopold, knocking off Morningside one time. That caused Morningside to travel to us at St. Francis instead of us going to Sioux City. So it worked out for us. And I think it was Jason. I think it was like a 21-17 game, or it might even been like Morningside was trying to tie the game on a field goal and missed. I mean, it was like a dogfight. And
it was a rainstorm. It was super wet.
100%.
I remember because I actually went to the game with Pat Coleman, because this was when I was living in Mankato, Minnesota. Pat was at the time, still is, I think he was living in Bloomington. He drove to Mankato. We got in my truck. We drove to Sioux City together, stood on the sideline, traveled the entire time. Pat Coleman from D3 football is awesome dude.
Yeah.
Meisner, D2 football, awesome dude. All those guys.
That was a dogfight, right? I mean, I think they had a home and home series, and I think both were literally tooth and nail. I mean, down to the wire. And you're talking, this is Coach Leopold, now the head coach of Kansas. That was his Whitewater teams that were top 2, top 3, them and Mount Union every other year, in the national championships. So absolutely. And I think the great Mountain Union teams, and I think of, what North Central's done the last couple of years in Chicagoland. I think I'd love to see them in Grandview play. I think that'd be a hell of a game.
So it was a 35-31 loss. Whitewater scored late, I believe, may have been off of an interception to make it 35-21, because it was 28-21, I believe, late. That was actually in 2016 was that game. So
and traveled to St. Francis, baby, in the quarterfinal.
I think I've got to reverse that. They lost 35-31 in 2016. On the road,
at Whitewater,
the home game was in Morningside, and that was the one that I was at. The one that was in Sioux City, it was 33-30 was the loss. So yeah, you were right with that one back in 2015.
But 2016, when they lost to Whitewater, that put Morningside on the road in round 2, Jason, because of that Division III loss. They shouldn't have been punished for it, really, when you look at it, but they were, because they had a loss. They came to us, and we were incredibly beneficial in that.
Got the win, 42-35. There you go.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I've got the information right in front of me here. I didn't remember that. All right, man. We should wrap things up. We have lives, we have jobs, we have wives, we have things we need to do, unfortunately, that make us actual money.
Yeah, probably should do that. Great talking to you. This is fun. This is kind of like overtime the whole time, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's perfect that way. Yeah, G-rated version. Someday we'll do the special link we'll.
How Pat and Jason can get canceled.
Yes. Called Pat and Jason decided it wasn't worth it anymore. Yeah, let's not do it. Let's not do it. All right, buddy. I appreciate you coming on and talking, and we'll be back again randomly throughout the spring, hopefully interviewing some coaches. If not, we'll be doing this and just kind of talking about the world of NAIA football to make sure everybody's appetite for this level of football gets wet every now and then, and we can kind of start looking forward to what's potentially happening next fall, which will be another great NAIA football season.
Be right around the corner.
All right, he's Pat Donley. I'm Jason Dannelly. This is NAIA football from the Victory Sports Network.